You've heard this fact 100 times, so it must be true, right? We swallow gum for 7 years. Napoleon was short. Humans only use 10% of their brain. None of that is true. But if you've heard them enough times, some part of you still hesitates before saying so. That hesitation has a name, and once you understand where it comes from, you'll start noticing it everywhere. In the news, in your own head. Psychologists call it the illusory truth effect, the simple, unsettling fact that repetition alone can make a lie feel true. Not new evidence, not a better argument, just hearing it again. In 1977, 3 researchers, Lynn Hasher, David Goldstein, and Thomas Toppino, ran a strange experiment. They gave people 60 trivia-style statements, some true, some false, and asked them to rate how believable each one was. Weeks later, they brought the same people back and showed them some of the same statements mixed in with new ones. The statements people had seen before, even the false ones, got higher truth ratings the second time around. Nothing about the evidence had changed. Only the exposure had. That alone would be unsettling enough. But it's just the surface. Here's what's actually happening in your skull. Your brain is lazy, in the efficient sense, not the insulting one. It's constantly looking for shortcuts to avoid the metabolic cost of deep thinking. And one of its favorite shortcuts is something researchers call processing fluency. How easily a thought moves through your mind. The first time you hear a claim, your brain has to work, checking it against what you know, weighing plausibility. The second time, that path is already worn smooth. It slides through with less friction. And your brain, which can't directly measure truth, uses that friction, or lack of it, as a stand-in. Easy to process gets quietly relabeled as probably true. It's not logic. It's a feeling mistaken for a verdict. Now here's where it gets worse. In 2015, researcher Lisa Fazio ran a version of this experiment with a cruel twist. She used statements people should have already known were false, things that contradicted general knowledge most adults have. Repetition still worked, even against things people knew on some level to be wrong. Familiarity crept in and nudged their confidence anyway. Knowing the truth is not a vaccine. It's barely a speed bump, and it gets worse still. There's a related effect called the sleeper effect, where people forget the source of information faster than they forget the information itself. So imagine you hear a false claim, and later, someone corrects it. Weeks pass. The specific memory of this was debunked fades faster than the memory of the claim itself. What's left behind is just a familiar idea, with the warning label peeled off. This isn't just an accident of memory. It's been used on purpose for a very long time. Propaganda strategists in the 20th century built entire campaigns around a principle sometimes called the big lie. The idea that a claim repeated often enough, loudly enough, and consistently enough will eventually be accepted. Not because anyone verified it, but because it became too familiar to question. Advertisers figured out a gentler version of the same trick decades ago. A jingle repeated 50 times a day isn't trying to convince you with an argument. It's trying to make your brain associate a brand name with ease, with the feeling of already knowing it long before you ever make a purchasing decision. You're not persuaded, you're worn smooth. And now take that same mechanism and hand it to an algorithm. Social media platforms don't repeat information because they verified it. They repeat what generates engagement, and false or exaggerated claims travel further than boring, accurate ones. A single scroll session can expose you to the same rumor, reworded slightly, from a dozen different accounts in the span of minutes. To your brain, dressed differently, but structurally, the same claim triggers a version of that same fluency effect. Each exposure standing the idea a little smoother, a little more familiar, a little more obviously true. A 1977 lab finding with 60 index cards has become the operating principle of platforms with billions of users. The mechanism didn't change, only the delivery system did. So if repetition can quietly rewire what feels true, and that process is now automated and aimed at you constantly, what do you actually do with that? First, notice the feeling, not just the fact. When something feels obviously true with no real reason why, that's not a red flag to ignore. It's a cue to ask, where have I heard this before? Not, is this correct? Familiarity and accuracy are not the same signal, even though they feel identical from the inside. Second, trace the claim back not just to yourself, but to its actual source. Ancient wisdom across nearly every tradition warns against the crowd as proof. The idea that what everyone knows, or what's said often enough, is on its own no evidence of anything. Repetition is not testimony. Before you accept something as true, ask what's actually holding it up besides having heard it before. Third, when it matters, slow the path down on purpose. Fluency does its damage when a thought moves fast and unexamined. The fix isn't distrusting everything. That's exhausting and impossible. It's reserving that friction for the claims that would actually cost you something if you got them wrong. This isn't a flaw that makes you gullible. It's a shortcut your mind uses for almost everything, and most of the time it serves you well. The goal isn't to shut it off, it's to know when to override it. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Fact-checkers for decades tried to fight misinformation by repeating the false claim before correcting it. No, you do not swallow gum for 7 years. Turns out that repetition, even in the act of debunking, can reinforce the very myth it's trying to kill. The myth gets another rep. The correction is just extra noise attached to it. Some of the most well-intentioned attempts to fight illusory truth may have been feeding it the entire time.